Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Squeak, and we have a lot to talk about. This week, America made great strides in foreign policy with our Commander-in-Chief meeting with foreign leaders. Senator Rand Paul was attacked over a landscaping dispute. Taco Bell is accused of racism, and we break down Trump's 2-week tour of the Orient. All this and more this week on the Squeakly Report. We, the American people, are at war. How many rich, cigar-chomping, megalomaniac health insurance CEOs doubling their profits? How many people have to die before we're willing to admit that we have a problem here? My name is Squeak Attack. Get used to me. I'll try not to flip my lid too much. Alright, I'm gonna be straight with you. It's been kind of a slow week. So we're starting off with some of the funny BS that got flung around. What better place to start a dialogue than with a woman accusing Taco Bell of racism because they refused to serve her? French fries. Insert sitcom laugh track here. They refused to serve her French fries, and she's accusing them of racism. First off, the woman was clearly intoxicated at the time. The video clip you're about to hear does open with her thinking that she was in a Burger King, not a Taco Bell. No matter how many times the cashier and several other customers tried to tell her she is at a Taco Bell and not a Burger King, she continued to insist that she was, in fact, in a Burger King, that she had gotten French fries there before, and that she was being discriminated against. Roll clip.
Okay, I just literally want a medium French fries and from the dollar
French
menu.
fries?
Yes, French fries.
We don't sell French fries.
You know, your Burger King, you don't sell French fries?
You think you're in Burger King?
This is Taco Bell.
See? Welcome
Okay,
to
but Taco Bell, literally,
Help
I've never been able to not get an order in.
Oh, sorry. Welcome to Taco Bell. We are here today.
Tell me what French fry orders you have.
We don't have French fries. We sell
No, not
Taco
French
Bell.
fries, card. Anything along the side. Anything that's helpful, just tell me.
We don't sell French fries. This is Taco
I'm
Bell.
not asking you for French fries. I'm literally asking you. Tell me what you guys.
That's the menu. Go ahead. Read the menu.
You want to be in, like, this is racism and it's funny.
No, it's not, girl.
No, it is.
They got tacos and burritos.
Oh, I'm so.
Now, normally, I would be of the opinion that everybody can, and everybody at some point in their life is discriminated against. We've seen many attempts at, what would you even call this? Not whitewashing. Shoe polishing? We've seen universities trying to shoe polish their staff, films that cast black and white actors as biological relatives, and racist rants against the perceived white majority on social media. However, in this case, I agree with the people laughing over the fact that she's a white woman playing the race card, not for lack of recognition of their ignorance, mind you, but because they're slapping their knees as much as I am on this one. There's just something funny about a drunk white chick, probably also high, crying racism over French fries. Again, French fries. You know what goes great with French fries, though? Cheeseburgers. President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had a meeting over hamburgers. Nothing wrong there, right? Oh, wait. According to leftist media, such as Huffington Post, our good friends, Trump ordered from a burger stand that imports its beef from the US and uses American cheese, the traditional cheese topping of a cheeseburger, and that's inherently bad. American cheese is, of course, the de facto standard for burgers all over the world. Japan is included in that sentiment. Happens in Europe. That's the way they do things in Canada, much of Latin America. It's never the good stuff, of course. For those of you outside the US, yes, there are different kinds of American cheese, many different kinds, in fact. The same way there are different kinds of cheddar and mozzarella. The good kind has small holes throughout, a sharp flavor, and is actually kind of hard to cut, so it breaks under the knife and as a result comes out with a slight zigzagged rigidness to it. Japan imports a lot of Kraft singles though, which isn't exactly cheese per se, but whatever. He ate a burger with American cheese, and everyone's up in arms about that. HuffPo goes into detail about how Obama dined on sushi in Japan, and implied that he is on some moral high ground as a result. This is what our comparison of presidents has come to people. What they choose to eat for lunch while meeting with foreign leaders. A plate of traditional nigiri sushi can run you thousands of yen at a high-end restaurant. A burger like Trump ordered costs about 1,000 yen or $10. All just because Trump doesn't care for raw fish and grilled eel. This isn't the first time Trump has been criticized for being frugal, practical. Melania was attacked for wearing $60 Adidas. We covered that a while back. One thing, though, that I definitely find really funny is how many news sites are attacking him for not eating sushi, without having the cultural understanding to notice that Japan doesn't actually eat all that much sushi to begin with. Yeah, surprisingly, a country whose housing prices have skyrocketed recently, with very limited space for new development, where people tend to live incredibly frugally, doesn't buy expensive high-end fish products all that often. Sushi-grade fish is several times more expensive than the standard fillets most people are accustomed to eating, even in Japan. And while you certainly can get the authentic high-quality sushi that you would expect, it's still considered a treat, not a staple. It's not what people eat every day. Maybe they should have gone out for gyudon, a much more common and authentic Japanese dish. Oh, but that dish would be insulting to Prime Minister Abe because it's considered a quick meal for overworked salarymen. There's always ramen noodles, though, that in turn could be considered inconsiderate of President Trump's position, considering he comes from a country where the Japanese marketed ramen noodles not as a complex art, like they do in their homeland, but rather a 25-cent dinner for college students. Why is the media focusing all of its attention on this kind of crap anyway? He ate a hamburger, big freaking whoop! No wonder Obama didn't get anything done and instead bent common decency over the kitchen counter and screwed her repeatedly for 8 years. At least he ate sushi. Most people criticizing Trump's choice of lunch probably can't even identify what traditional sushi is. The most adventurous they've probably eaten was something like the spider roll. It's an American machination. It's not authentic. It's not real. I love sushi. I also love good burgers. If I went to Japan, I'd probably try one of both, but that's just me. Japan cooks their burgers differently than we do in the US. They use different ingredients. At the same time, they also have a wider variety of sushi, and they have it in more abundance. So I would have both. But again, that's the way I am. Different strokes for different folks. Donald Trump doesn't care for sushi. The cultural ignorance of these leftist media outlets, though, is infuriating. I consider myself not necessarily a weeaboo, but definitely someone who appreciates a lot of Japanese media and culture. Okay, I do actually own one piece of Vocaloid merchandise, so I guess technically I am a weeaboo, but whatever. At least I, the alleged racist, xenophobic right-winger, can identify both a great TV show / graphic novel series like Attack on Titan and a real plate of traditional Japanese nigiri sushi. Remember, people, if it's in a roll, it ain't real. So don't go criticizing the president for not eating a food that's not even from the country he's visiting. And some historians claim that sushi was actually first put together in China, not even Japan. So again, what's the big deal? You know why? Because ignorance, racism, being insensitive to other people's cultures only apply when the left wants it to. That's not the worst they've got up their sleeves, though. Wednesday of last week, while most of us were out doing normal adult things like working, taking care of our families, and enjoying our lives, several thousand people attended several events held across the nation in which they just screamed up at the sky. They screamed, why? Because Trump was elected a whole year ago. In other news, Jolly Time and Orville Redenbacher, their stock prices skyrocketed for about 48 hours leading up to the event. And the state of California is currently experiencing a shortage of melted butter. Popcorn sales tripled, and onlookers had a good time. Of course, Donald J. Trump Jr. has to try to interject his own jokes about his 3-year-old being part of the protest, because 3-year-olds scream a lot. They say if you have to explain the joke, it ain't funny. Well, if Squeak here has to explain the joke, it's really not funny. Stick to your day job, Junior. But seriously though, what is up with these protesters lately? Is that all people know how to do, complain? We elected a GOP majority with the hopes that someone would make up for the sheer apathy of these people who refuse to work because they prioritize their own feelings over actually getting something done. They're parasites. Protesters, those running around in pussy hats and waving signs, are parasites. Thank God they breathe less frequently than normal people due to the fact that they have trouble forming long-term relationships with normies. They have too much control. We've been giving them an inch and they took a mile. That's what Obama supporters spent 8 years doing. Violence is okay if it's against the right people. Criticism is okay as long as you're criticizing the right people. It was offensive wrong speak to criticize Obama for eating dog in China, but it's your moral obligation to attack Trump for eating a burger in Japan. Mike Pence gets harassed regularly for having the wrong opinions on controversial issues. The left doesn't want a dialogue, they want totalitarian control of everything you do and say. So they attack him for being less concerned with LGBT issues than issues of national security. He's had LGBT dance parties held on his private property after hours, which I'm pretty sure violates dozens of laws. Mila Kunis donates money to Planned Parenthood, the same favorite charity of John Jigsaw Kramer in Pence's name. No, you know what? That's giving her too much credit. Jigsaw would never hurt an innocent child. Let's not put Kramer and Kunis in the same category. He's leagues above her. Speaking of LGBT issues, here's a funny one. A gay couple from Iran came to the US so they could be together without having to be questioned. They came in as refugees. HuffPo writes a teary story about their plight, and yeah, it's very emotionally misleading. But here's my question. Why not go to Germany instead? Why the US? Germany loves anyone who isn't white and would be glad to put you on display with the rest of their government's social justice trophies. Do you know why the US is one of the best qualities of life for LGBT and other marginalized individuals? Because our people laid down their lives to fight off tyranny from the British and the racist, slave-loving, lynch-mobbing South. Imagine if the Confederacy had won the Civil War, we wouldn't have even the notion of LGBT rights. We have gay and trans people strung up like piñatas, if that were the case. Imagine if the US hadn't defeated the Nazis. What would it be like in Germany? Same thing. My point, you need to fight against this crap, not run from it. Everyone always thinks they should just up and leave if they don't get what they want, if they don't like the way things are going. Musicians threaten to leave bands. Newscasters threaten to leave networks. Parents threaten to disenroll their children from public schools. Marginalized citizens threaten to leave. Oh, how funny it was when President Trump was elected and people are threatening to go to Canada. All of them are just sitting here, by the way. You want basic human rights in Iran? Don't run away like a coward. Stand up and fight. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Maybe if the Iranian citizens were willing to fight against such tyranny, things like this wouldn't happen. Things would not have turned out the way that they did. But no, let's just guilt everyone into feeling bad for somebody who didn't do what they were supposed to do to begin with, who comes from a culture that didn't do what they were supposed to do, and yet expects special treatment. That's not the way things work, people. If you're not willing to put in the time and effort to earn something, it's not going to be handed to you. That's the law of the land. That's called adulthood. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky was attacked last week. You know, of course, I have a great deal of respect for this man. For his no-nonsense attitude, strict vision of perfection probably wants things like healthcare reform and gun rights to be managed. You know who didn't have a lot of respect for him? His neighbor, Rene Boucher. Boucher, I don't know how his name's supposed to be pronounced. I really don't care. He's a dick. He assaulted Senator Paul over what was allegedly a landscape dispute, fracturing 6 of the senator's ribs in the process. Initially, Senator Paul assumed his injuries were fairly minor. Now, however, he's in a ton of pain. He had to undergo a medical examination before he could even file charges. And yeah, they found 6 broken ribs. Now, what's interesting is that these charges will carry a penalty based on the motivation of the crime. If it truly was a landscaping dispute, which most of the neighborhood and community think is unlikely, he'll be serving 12 months in prison. If, however, it was determined to have been a politically motivated attack, he will face up to 8 years behind bars. Now, Senator Paul has been downplaying the assault. He seems more interested in privacy and expediency in the matter. Very few details have been confirmed other than the fact that he is in a lot of pain. But in my opinion, it's obviously motivated by politics. Why would you break a man's ribs over lawn clippings or a rotten tree stump? I mean, okay, he is a GOP senator. He's also one of the most modernized, libertarian, almost paleo-conservative senators we've got. He's anti-war, pro-gun, pro-weed, and pro-privatization. Unless you have the same stringent political bias as the leftist media, you're not going to be severely injuring this man over his politics. This guy is a psycho who needs to be locked away for a long time. Let's just be thankful he only assaulted the senator. It could have been a lot worse. Senator Paul could be dead right now. We here at the Squeakly Report wish him a speedy recovery. Can't imagine the kind of pain he's going through. And honestly, knowing that man, the most painful part of the recovery process of all is probably sitting there doing nothing. Just watching as the country goes to hell right in front of him. We've got some new developments in the Hollywood sexual abuse epidemic. Remember a while back when internet provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos was dismissed from his position as tech editor-in-chief at Breitbart News over comments that being molested wasn't the worst thing that happened to him, that in hindsight, it was actually a positive experience? We can debate this until it's 13 o'clock, but the victim reserves all rights in these situations, not the peanut gallery. If Milo isn't traumatized, if he does feel like it impacted him positively, that's his prerogative. Besides, in his home country of the United Kingdom, the age at which he claims to have been assaulted is legally considered to be past the minimum age of sexual majority. Legally, of course. We're not talking about ethically, but you get the idea. At home in England, what happened to him would have been unethical, gross, but not illegal. Meanwhile, you got actor George Takei. He came out about how liberating being sexually abused was as a kid, in his case, and he got praised for it The only difference between the two is politics, Milo being much more conservative and Take being your typical authoritarian liberal. If you're wondering why I refer to Milo by his first name, it's because I'm not saying Yiannopoulos every time I have to reference him. We'll be here all night. But we found out this week that between politically motivated hate speech rants on social media, Take has been getting friendly with much, much younger men, having assaulted men half his age, including undressing them while they were asleep. How funny is it that the guy everyone praises for being a proud rape victim has violated people himself? They say abuse victims are more likely to become abusers themselves, which is a shame because you would hope most people would respond to things like this with a desire to do better, to fight against abuse, and not continue the vicious cycle, but, these are just the facts. That's the case with the Dreyfuss family. Richard Dreyfuss is being accused of having exposed himself to female employees and writers, as well as inappropriate remarks and unwanted advances. Funny enough, he has proclaimed he was proud of his son Harry for coming out about being assaulted by Kevin Spacey when he was just 18, despite having assaulted people himself. The hypocrisy of Hollywood knows no bounds, people. Take, meanwhile, refuses to comment, saying he doesn't remember his accuser at all. Yeah, because we were all born yesterday, right, Georgie Porgy? We're all just going to buy that. Oh, wait, the media is. I wouldn't be surprised if Dreyfuss actually put his son in that situation, and if this whole coming out about thing is just a cover, again, for the shady pedophile underbelly of Hollywood. Big-name producer Gary Goddard is being accused by actor Anthony Edwards of sexual assault when he was just 12 years old. Charlie Sheen has been accused of child rape, and this is a story I'd love to get your thoughts on social media because this one I'm not really sure what to think. Dominic Brassia, I think that's how you pronounce his name, claims that Sheen molested late Corey Haim on the set of the 1986 film Lucas, which is odd considering Sheen and Brassia were believed to be personal friends. Then accusations were denied both by Sheen and Haim's own mother. Now here's where this story gets a bit odd. Brassia himself was accused over a year ago of having abused Haim, though allegedly this accusation came from last week's turd of the week, Corey Feldman, and these accusations have come back up to the surface. Given recent events, though, I must admit I'm almost tempted to say both Brassia and Sheen have been somehow sexually involved with Haim. Both of them. Tweet me at Squeak_Attack if you have any thoughts on this matter, any insight. We'll add this to our ever-growing list of sexual depravity cases that we'll be keeping you abreast on. Like Louis C.K., who assaulted and or harassed at least 5 female comedians and apparently can't keep his hands out of his pants. He has admitted guilt in all these cases. He does also admit that he had permission to do so each time, but accepts responsibility for the depravity of his own actions. It's not entirely clear if he did have such permission or not. He probably didn't. So this is just something else weird I noticed while I was stumbling through Huffington Post, because hey, it's fun to comment on their weird stories, right? Diana Huey will be playing Ariel in the upcoming Disney reimagining of The Little Mermaid. Diana Huey is Asian. Most people are reasonably indifferent to this fact. Some people are calling this brave and equality. Some of us, while we don't really give a crap about this sort of thing, however, are calling this what it truly is. Virtue signaling BS. Want more Asians in film? Maybe try making a movie based on Kaguya Hime, instead of forcing Studio Ghibli to be the first one to bring this adaptation to film form in the West. Seriously, it's a great story. Why has nobody tried to market it here? That's not insensitivity, though. According to Hollywood, insensitivity would be not having an identitarian Asian playing a mermaid in an adaptation of a Danish book and remake of a famous iconic film about a ginger mermaid as an identitarian Asian. That's where the issue is. Because it's not just an Asian woman playing Ariel, it's an Asian woman playing Ariel and saying, look at me, I'm Asian. That's what's important to her as an actress, is her identity as an Asian. Therefore, she's an identitarian. Remember when I brought up whitewashing earlier? In this case, it would be more like, egg washing. Everyone complains when a white person takes a non-white story, despite it not happening all that much. They complained about Scarlett Johansson playing Motoko Kusanagi in Ghost in the Shell. But nobody complained about the Full Metal Alchemist live-action adaptation starring an Asian kid in a blonde wig. See, the original author of Full Metal Alchemist, again, my weeaboo is showing, she wrote the story about 2 blonde boys living in an alternate reality Germany. Okay, they were actually of Xerxian descent. If any of you are FMA fans, you're probably trying to attack me for what I just said. But considering the way Xerxes is portrayed throughout the books and TV series, being a desert enclave of pale-skinned, golden blonde people, I think this counts as egg washing. Oh, and did I mention that the Xerxes people, named after a Persian emperor no less, can grow full beards, something that doesn't happen all that commonly in Asia? I'm just saying, Scarlett Johansson played a robotic chick who wasn't even an organic human being. She had an Asian name that's significantly less insensitive than having an Asian kid play a Germanic character if you want to get technical. I don't really care either way. What ticks me off is the amount of cultural BS that's going on between these two different scenarios. Disney is just virtue signaling. Notice they don't have any non-black actors playing lines in their upcoming Lion King remake. I mean, if you're really looking for diversity, why not try casting some Hispanics or Native Americans? Hey, here's an idea since we want to be progressive and whatnot. Why not cast some people who don't speak a word of English? Why should they be left out of your virtue signaling cash grab scheme? Gotta have a Middle Easterner in Aladdin. But Will Smith as the genie? Yeah, that's totally okay. Oh god, that means the genie's totally gonna sound like Will Smith. Oh god, I just keep thinking of the fish from that movie with the sharks. Ugh. Sorry, but I'm a 90s kid through and through. Nothing will ever match Scott Weinger, Linda Larkin, Jonathan Freeman, and Robin Williams in the cast of Aladdin. Talent and presence have nothing to do with race, people. Stop shoe polishing and egg washing everything. To clear the air, though, I am going to say that talent in and of itself goes both ways. A little while back, Squeal made a comment asking me as to why the new Netflix adaptation of Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, why they had an Indian Uncle Monty and a black Aunt Josephine, despite clearly being ethnically white themselves. Well, for starters, it is pretty much established in the story that she's not actually their aunt, but rather just a very close family friend. He's not really their uncle. Again, same thing. However, the actors were amazing. Asif Mandvi plays a significantly more endearing Uncle Monty than Billy Connolly, who played Uncle Monty in the original film adaptation. Likewise, Alfre Woodard is a better, more believable Aunt Josephine than the one played by Meryl Streep. Woodard will actually be playing Simba's mother, Sarabi. She's probably going to be most of the good that's going to come from the new Lion King movie. Oh, that and James Earl Jones, of course. Everyone loves him. These are probably the only two characters in that film who are not a social justice train wreck or Hollywood bedroom buddies just fondling one another. There's nothing wrong with a diverse cast, but make sure they're good. And don't go attacking people just because they are skeptical on the fabricated merits of forced diversity. I got news for you. There are really good white actors out there too. There are great Hispanic, Native American actors, Pacific Islander actors. Why don't you give them a chance in the spotlight, huh? Oh, here's another high-profile case of alleged whitewashing. Goku in the film Dragon Ball Evolution is portrayed by a white guy. Yeah, Goku's an alien from another planet, people, in a world with talking lizards and whatever the crap Majin Buu is supposed to be. An alien with a monkey tail. Alright, so now we have our big story of the week. Donald J. Trump has been touring Asia, as presidents often do. We're going to break down his tour loosely based on each of the 5 major countries that he was visiting. First stop was Japan, where the aforementioned cheeseburger incident took place. Honestly, not much happened there, other than some probably much-needed quality time with the 2 leaders, and, that's okay. I'm not saying Japan would ever betray American trust. I don't think that's going to happen. Not after what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, on the years we spent as their de facto military presence, the dispute in the South China Sea, and so on and so forth, but it does reaffirm, on the world stage, that even though Obama was willing to kowtow to every Tom, Dick, and Haruki on the planet, Trump is going to expect the same in return. And you know something? It's working. Trump spent Tuesday in South Korea, where he learned firsthand of the apprehension that the Korean media and people have been experiencing in regards to the ongoing conflict between the US and North Korea. Moon Jae-in, the current president, has been largely a pacifist over the past few months, usually relying on allies to uphold their sovereignty on the world stage, or their own diplomatic wiles. And while diplomacy might work with many Western nations, it's impossible to maintain any sort of diplomatic sovereignty when dealing with North Korea. From the outside, the meeting didn't go over as cordially as hoped. Oh, but wait, that's just the articles I've been reading simply implying that. No, what actually happened was the meeting sent the 2 of them a strong message. Pacifism is not going to work. The 2 leaders are going to have to work together, take action, to keep North Korea at bay. It has, however, stirred Kim Jong-un himself up, who called Trump old in an obvious taunt, to which Trump replied on social media in a very trollish and calculated fashion that he wouldn't call Kim short and fat. And you know something? Such provocations are a good thing. South Korea is worried they will be attacked by the North, but the moment the North puts a bullet in the chamber, the US will wipe that part of the peninsula off the map. Oh yes, there will be blood, but you have to shed a little blood to make a Bloody Mary. That's not how that works, is it? Oh well, the point is, Trump's got South Korea covered. Nothing to worry about there. There will be Hyundai Elantras and Samsung Smart TVs for all of us, the world over, for years to come. Next we have China. It's one of the most criticized parts of his trip. He arrived and immediately went into quality time mode with President Xi Jinping, the same as he had done with Abe. They talked trade in much the same manner as one would expect in any business deal. They struck a balance of firmness and warmness. He then doubled down on his claim that he would hold China responsible for unethical trade practices, and instead Trump assumed responsibility for allowing things to get out of hand, much to Xi's delight. Again, everybody's flipping their lids over this. News, flashy ding-dongs! It was a misdirect and Xi took the bait! The US is responsible for allowing things to get out of hand. Allowing! We allowed things to get out of hand. Geez, I never thought I'd have to defend Trump's semantics. Yeah, there is a bit more to this tale that needs to be addressed, because while everything is probably going to turn out well for the time being in China, Trump also had to meet with Tran Dai Quang, and I probably pronounced that completely incorrectly. I don't know any Vietnamese. Sorry. President Tran was all ears when Trump suggested serving as a mediator in the ongoing dispute over the South China Sea. We know that this is one of the reasons why China and Vietnam don't exactly get along these days. Another being the fact that some Chinese military members were caught a while back murdering and cannibalizing Vietnamese citizens. That happened. Now here's the crazy part. Xi's on board with this. Granted, Xi has proven himself to be a sly fox in regards to these kinds of deals in the past, but if it keeps US-Vietnam relations in good standing for the time being, and China's cool with it, mission accomplished. Trump achieved diplomacy. The last stop on Trump's tour was Manila, in the Philippines, amid violent protests due to the shaky rule and totalitarian campaign and carnage of President Rodrigo Duterte, including the recent shooting of a child. Yeah, they kill children in the Philippines out of fear that they might be smuggling drugs. They keep their people in the dark. Most of them didn't even know that Donald Trump was elected our president. One of the few places in the world where they didn't know that we had a new president. North Korea knew right away who the new president was going to be. They were watching the election coverage live. Not much really happened at this meeting per se. They had a glitzy dinner, acted like friends. Duterte refused to comment on the South China Sea issue, and Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen didn't even bother to attend. Most likely as not to exacerbate tensions between Taiwan and China. See, Taiwan wants to be an independent nation. China, on the other hand, is trying to maintain control, and Trump has fallen under fire in the past for referring to her as the president of Taiwan, despite the fact that the US is supposed to recognize a single China. The Philippines are basically Asia's version of Central America. It's a tumultuous country at war with its own government, and probably the most dangerous player in the talks over the South China Sea. The only reason Trump was even there in the first place was to show support for diplomacy between Xi, Tran, Moon, and Abe. So what can we take away from these meetings and these events? Don't mess with the Donald, that's what. He's a shrewd businessman and negotiator, as opposed to Obama, who would have probably just paid the other presidents and prime minister off in exchange for a limited period of peace. Trump has a lot of work to do here at home, but if it helps the Far East out in the process, I can't hold it against him. Oh, and if you're worried about the talks with Putin while in Vietnam, go watch Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC. That's all they're talking about. I'm not here to talk about the Russian facade. I'm here to talk about news. I'm here to talk about real things. Things that are actually happening in the world. If you like real news and you want to know the real truth, maybe you just want to express your opinions on these stories and more, follow me on Twitter at Squeak_Attack. Come like the official Squeak Attack Facebook page. We have a discussion group set up now as well. Seriously, social media is the easiest way to keep up with the show and to suggest stories to cover, and we will hear your suggestions. You've got nothing to lose. Come give us a follow. It's been a great week for the truth, everyone. Be seeing ya. Like what you heard? Hate what you heard? Want to see me dead? Follow me on Twitter at Squeak_Attack and join our Squeak Attack feed Facebook group and fan page. Rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Leave a comment on the blog. And as always, have a good day.